In 1968, CBS killed Lost in Space without telling the cast. The crew finished the last episode believing they were coming back for a fourth season. They got no phone call, no meeting. The actors found out the way the public found out. But the real reason CBS killed the show is not what they ever said in public. And it goes back further than anyone expected, all the way to a network screening in 1965, where the executives greeted the pilot with laughter, and a man ran toward the projector to stop it. The version of the show that came out of that screening is not the version you remember. These are 14 weird facts about Lost in Space. Before we begin, subscribe and hype this video so more retro fans can find it. Let's get started. Number 14. What Alan did not know when he was halfway to that projector was that the executives were not laughing at the pilot, they were laughing with it.
Its fabulous new series, Lost in Space.
His story editor, Anthony Wilson, physically grabbed him and pulled him back into his chair. Wilson whispered 4 words into Alan's ear. Irwin, they love it. The man who funded part of the pilot personally was Red Skelton, the comedian. He had put his own money behind a science fiction show because he believed in Alan. The total budget was somewhere around $600,000, with some sources saying closer to $690,000. A standard hour of network television in that era cost between $100,000 and $130,000. Alan had spent 6 times that on a single episode that did not even air. It was the most expensive television pilot ever made up to that date. That was more than Desilu had spent on the original Star Trek pilot, The Cage, which came in around $630,000 the same year. And here is the part nobody talks about. A few weeks after that screening, a different writer walked into CBS to pitch a different space show. The network president, James Aubrey, listened for 2 hours and then turned him down. He told the writer that CBS already had its space show. The writer's name was Gene Roddenberry. The show he was pitching was Star Trek. The most expensive pilot ever made got a yes, Star Trek got a no. And the rest of the show that grew out of that yes did not look anything like the one CBS had paid for. Number 13. The spacecraft. The 2-deck flying saucer with the elevator down the middle, the silver hull, the bubble canopy windows. The most iconic ship in the history of 1960s television. In the pilot, it did not exist. The ship in the original pilot was called the Gemini 12. It was a different vessel entirely. A single-deck flying saucer designed by production artist William Creeber. It had no airlock. It had no elevator, it had no pilot seats at the front, it had almost no controls visible on the flight deck. The Robinson family flew the entire mission standing up, in a saucer that looked more like a barber's chair on landing struts than the cinematic spacecraft fans remember. When the show went into production, Alan had Robert Kinoshita redesign the ship from scratch. Kinoshita added the lower deck, the elevator, the navigation console, the bubble canopy, and the airlock. The redesigned ship was renamed the Jupiter 2. The Gemini 12 footage was so similar in exterior shots that pieces of the original pilot's spacecraft sequences were used as exterior footage of the Jupiter 2 Inches the Aired series. The same went for the meteor storm, the alien landscape shots, the rocket pack scenes. Entire sequences from the unaired pilot got cannibalized into the first 5 episodes of the actual show. If you have ever watched those early episodes and felt that the shots of the ship in space did not quite match the interior sets, that is because they were the wrong ship. The most recognizable spacecraft of 60s science fiction was a redesign of a ship that had a different name, a different shape, and a different number of decks. The Jupiter 2, you remember, was built on top of a ship that nobody was supposed to see. Number 12. The eerie, otherworldly music that scored the original Lost in Space pilot was not original. It was not composed for the show. It was not even written in the same decade. 20th Century Fox owned a library of scores from films they had already produced. Rather than commission an original score for the pilot, Alan tracked in music from 3 Fox films from the 1950s. The opening theme came from Bernard Herrmann's score for The Day the Earth Stood Still, the 1951 science fiction classic. The atmospheric desert and alien planet music came from Herrmann's score for Journey to the Center of the Earth from 1959. The most haunting sequence in the pilot, John Robinson's rocket pack flight searching for his missing daughter, was scored to music Herrmann had written for an underwater drama called Beneath the 12-Mile Reef from 1953. 3 scores from 3 different films, all by the same composer, none of them written for science fiction television, all spliced together to give the Lost in Space pilot its sound. The pilot did not even have its own music. Every alien planet, every meteor storm, every moment of suspense was somebody else's work, repurposed because the show did not yet exist. The original score that would replace all of that came from a composer Alan had not yet hired. We will get to him. Number 11. But Williams was not the only person Alan had not yet hired. The most important character of the show, the one who would become its most quoted and most beloved figure, had not been invented either. Jonathan Harris was not supposed to be the lead. He was not even supposed to be a regular. He was hired as a recurring villain that the writers had quietly planned to kill off before the end of the first season. Then he showed up on set and started doing something nobody had asked him to do. He started rewriting his own lines. Bill Mumy was 11 years old at the time, playing Will Robinson. Mumy later described it in print. Harris would come up to him during rehearsals in the middle of a scripted scene and say, "No, dear boy. Before you say that line, the robot will say this, and this, and then you'll deliver your line." He invented his own dialogue. He invented his own insults. The alliterative phrases that became his trademark, bubble-headed booby, bellicose bumpkin, traitorous transistorized toad, he wrote those at night, by hand, and brought them to set the next morning. He also negotiated something nobody else in television had ever negotiated. The other regulars had locked their billing slots before he was hired. So Harris asked for the credit special guest star. He was the first actor in television history to receive that billing on every single episode of a series. By the end of season 1, the production was receiving more fan mail for Harris than for the rest of the cast combined. Robbing a show you were hired not to lead should be impossible. He did it in 6 episodes. And the man who paid the price for that robbery was the original lead of the show. Number 10. Guy Williams thought he had signed up for a serious science fiction drama. He had just come off 5 seasons of playing Zorro for Walt Disney. He was a trained fencer who had studied under Fred Cavens, the same Belgian master who choreographed the sword fights for Errol Flynn. He thought Professor John Robinson was going to be the lead of a thoughtful adult show about a family stranded among the stars. Then Jonathan Harris arrived and started rewriting the scripts in real time. By the middle of season 2, Williams was a background character in his own series. His screen time shrank. His storylines got pushed aside for whatever schemes Smith and the robot were running that week. He stopped being the hero and started being the dad in the background who occasionally said something stern. When the show was canceled in 1968, Williams did something nobody in his position usually does. He left Hollywood almost entirely. He moved to Buenos Aires, where reruns of Zorro had made him a household name, and he lived there for the rest of his life. He came back to the United States only for cast reunions, including a famous appearance on Family Feud with the rest of the Robinsons. He died there in 1989 of a brain aneurysm. He was 65 years old. The lead of the show became a character in the background of his own series. Then he left the country. Number 9. In February of 1968, 8 weeks before CBS would secretly cancel the show, the cast filmed an episode called The Great Vegetable Rebellion. It is the episode where Dr. Smith is turned into a stalk of celery. It is the episode with the talking carrot man named Tybo. It is the episode that TV Guide would later rank number 76 on their list of the 100 greatest episodes in television history, based entirely on how infamous it had become. The writer, Peter Packer, walked into Jonathan Harris's dressing room with the script hidden behind his back. He pulled it out and told Harris, "This is pure crap, but I don't have another idea in my head." It was Packer's 23rd and last script for the series. He was, in his own words, all written out. What happened on set was worse than the script. A jungle of plants borrowed from the 20th Century Fox nursery was hacked apart on camera by Guy Williams with a machete, while the script supervisor read the plants' moans of pain off camera. The Fox nursery foreman ran onto the soundstage screaming. A hemp cargo net the size of the ones the Marines used to board destroyers was dropped from the rafters onto Williams, June Lockhart, Mark Goddard, and Angela Cartwright. The net was so heavy that the 4 actors could not lift it off themselves. They stood under it in single file, with the net pressed against their chests, sobbing with laughter, while the prop crew gathered around to heave it off them. The director, Don Richardson, later called it the worst episode they ever made. Irwin Allen punished the cast for laughing. He wrote Guy Williams and June Lockhart out of the next 2 episodes and paid them their full salary anyway, just to keep them off the set. Lockhart later described the punishment with 3 words: "What a hoot." Goddard was spared only because, as he was told, they needed someone to drive the Chariot. Number 8. Bob May was the man inside the robot suit. He was the grandson of Sheik Johnson, half of the vaudeville duo Olsen and Johnson, and he had been performing since he was 2 years old. None of that prepared him for what the robot suit did to his body. The first time he put it on, the metal edges inside the legs cut his legs open. He came out of the suit bleeding. The wardrobe department bolted the legs together after that and started pulling him along on a wire for many shots. Close-ups of just the upper half of the robot, where the legs were not visible, got nicknamed by the crew the Bermuda Shorts. If you see the robot from the waist up only, it is usually because May was either sitting on a dolly or the lower half had been removed entirely. But the legs were not the strangest part. May could not easily get out of the suit between takes. Climbing in took time, and climbing out took longer. So he stayed inside. And he smoked. The crew installed an ashtray inside the robot suit. May would light a cigarette during breaks and exhale through the dome, and smoke would pour out of the top of the robot like a chimney. One day, Irwin Allen walked past the set, saw smoke billowing out of the robot, and shouted that the suit was on fire. Once he understood what was happening, he did not get angry. He told May to do it deliberately the next time a script called for the robot to be smoking. So, in any episode where the robot circuits are supposedly fried, what you are watching is Bob May with a lit cigarette inside an aluminum dome. That is the most absurd production detail of 1960s television, and nobody notices it. Number 7. The B9 robot was designed by a man named Robert Kinoshita. Kinoshita had a degree from USC and a quiet professional career in production design at 20th Century Fox. The robot has his name on the credits. What does not appear in the credits is that Kinoshita had already designed one of the most famous robots in cinema history. 9 years before Lost in Space, he had designed Robby the robot for the 1956 MGM film Forbidden Planet. Robby and the B9 share the same design language, the same emphasis on visible mechanical parts, the same proportional sense of a machine that is also somehow a person. They were not coincidentally similar. They were drawn by the same hand. Lost in Space actually leaned into this. Both robots appear on screen together in 2 episodes. In War of the Robots in Season 1, and in Condemned of Space in the Season 3 premiere, Robby the robot appears as a guest character alongside the B9. The same designer's 2 most famous creations, meeting in the same frame, 12 years apart. He went on to design 2 of the most iconic robots in screen history. He lived to be 100 years old. If you are enjoying this, please subscribe and hype this video. It helps the channel reach more people who actually remember when television looked like this. Thank you, and let's get back to the video. Number 6. The Chariot. The tracked vehicle the Robinsons drove across alien landscapes in Season 1. It was not a custom prop. It was a real, working Thiokol Sprite snowcat, a commercial snow tractor designed for industrial use in Arctic condition. A Ford 170 cubic inch inline-6 engine, a 4-speed automatic, 4 to 8 miles per gallon, range about 120 miles. That part is interesting on its own. The part that is incredible is what happened to the company that built it. Thiokol started as a chemical company. After Lost in Space wrapped, the company shifted its main business to rocketry. Thiokol built these solid rocket boosters for the space shuttle. Every shuttle launch from 1981 until 2011 used Thiokol boosters. The same company that built the tractor the Robinsons drove across a fake alien planet built the real boosters that put real astronauts into real orbit. And Thiokol also designed the airbags that landed the Mars Pathfinder on Mars in 1997. But it gets stranger. In 1978, Thiokol sold off its Snowcat division. The man who bought it was named John DeLorean. He renamed the company DMC, which stood for DeLorean Motor Company. Yes, the same DMC that built the gull-winged stainless steel car that became the time machine in Back to the Future. So the family Lost in Space drove a vehicle built by the same company that later put astronauts in orbit, that landed a rover on Mars, and that then got sold to the guy who built the car that travels in time. That is a sentence that should not be possible. It is the actual production lineage. Number 5. The show was originally going to be called Space Family Robinson. It was a clean title. It nodded to Johann David Wyss's 1812 novel, The Swiss Family Robinson. It told you exactly what the show was about. It was also already taken. Gold Key Comics had been publishing a comic book series called Space Family Robinson since 1962, 3 years before CBS bought the pilot. The premise was nearly identical. A family in a spacecraft, marooned, surviving. Gold Key had a strong case for an infringement claim if Allen had gone forward with that title. Instead of suing, Gold Key did something nobody saw coming. They reached an agreement with Allen. Allen got to keep the title Lost in Space, and Gold Key renamed their existing comic. From issue 16 onward, the comic was published as Space Family Robinson, Lost in Space. Same comic, same characters, with the new subtitle added so the comic could ride the show's marketing wave. It is the only known case in television history of a potential plaintiff renaming their own product to take advantage of the defendant's success. They did not sue, they piggybacked. Number 4. In the original concept of the show, John and Maureen Robinson were a married couple stranded in space with their 3 children. They were the parents. They were husband and wife. They were the emotional foundation of the family. The network censors decided that John and Maureen could not kiss on screen, not because of the era's general modesty about physical affection on television. Specifically, according to the censors, on-screen marital kissing between the Robinsons would, and this is the quoted language, disturb younger viewers and embarrass older ones. That phrase did not come out of nowhere. CBS had assigned Lost in Space to the Wednesday 7:30 p.m. time slot, which the network had officially designated as the Family Hour. Bill Mumy described the rule decades later. The network had what he called an absolutely powerful mandate, that nothing in that hour was allowed to scare little children. Even in the first season, the show had received complaints from CBS standards and practices for being too dark. The kissing ban was one piece of that mandate. The tonal lightning that turned the second season into a campy color spectacle was another piece of the same mandate. Long before Batman premiered on ABC and became the easy explanation for Lost in Space going silly, CBS itself had already been pulling the tone of the show down to fit the 7:30 time slot. Irwin Allen campaigned against the kissing ban for 2 full seasons. He eventually negotiated a partial concession. By the middle of the run, John and Maureen were allowed to share what the censors called hugs, pats on the arm, and affectionate looks. But on-screen kissing between the married parents at the center of the show remained forbidden through the entire 3-year run. A husband and wife stranded together in deep space for the rest of their lives were not allowed to kiss on television. That is the kind of decision that tells you exactly what mid-1960s broadcast standards thought television was for. Number 3. The theme music, the propulsive, brassy fanfare that opened every episode, that was a young composer named Johnny Williams. He had not made his big mark yet. A few years later, the same Johnny Williams would drop the nickname and start working with a director named Steven Spielberg. He composed the score for Jaws in 1975, then Star Wars in 1977, then Close Encounters of the Third Kind, then Superman, the Indiana Jones films, E.T., Schindler's List, Jurassic Park, the first 3 Harry Potter films. He has been nominated for 54 Academy Awards. He has won 5. He is the most decorated film composer in history. He also wrote a brand new theme for the show's 3rd season, a faster, more action-oriented opening that replaced the original. Most fans only remember the original. The 3rd season theme is rarely heard, but both of them came from the same man whose music became the soundtrack of the modern blockbuster era. Number 2. The pilot Irwin Allen made in 1964 and 1965, the most expensive television pilot in history at that point, did not have the robot. It did not have Dr. Zachary Smith. The 2 characters that defined the entire run of Lost in Space, the villain and the mechanical sidekick that became the most quoted and most memorable elements of the show, did not exist in the version CBS originally bought. The original pilot was called No Place to Hide. It starred Guy Williams, June Lockhart, Marta Kristen, Mark Goddard, Angela Cartwright, and Billy Mumy as a family of intellectual prodigies launching on a 100-year colonization flight to Alpha Centauri. The family was cooperative, friendly, focused on survival. It was a serious science fiction adventure about the smartest family in human history trying to live through a botched space mission. There was no villain, there was no robot, there was no comic relief. When CBS approved the show, Anthony Wilson, the same story editor who had grabbed Irwin Allen to stop him from halting the screening, told Allen the show needed 2 things to work as an ongoing series. It needed a recurring antagonist, and it needed a sidekick to give the kids someone to talk to. They settled on a stowaway saboteur named Dr. Zachary Smith. The part went to a working theater actor named Jonathan Harris. For the sidekick, Allen hired Robert Kinoshita, the man who had designed Robby the robot, and asked him to design something different. Kinoshita created the B9. The robot did not exist as a character until it was sketched out as a way to give the new villain someone to bicker with. The 2 most iconic characters in the history of Lost in Space, the villain and the robot, were Band-Aids. They were emergency additions to a serious science fiction drama because a story editor was nervous after a network screening. Hollywood learned the wrong lesson from this. They thought the show worked because of the camp. The show worked because of 2 characters nobody had originally planned to include. Number 1. The last scene of Season 3 was filmed in March 1968. The episode was called Junkyard in Space. The cast wrapped, hugged each other, and went home. Allen told them they were coming back. He had already begun ordering scripts for Season 4. A few weeks later, CBS announced its fall 1968 lineup. Lost in Space was not on the list. The cast was not informed in advance. Marta Kristen, who played Judy Robinson, found out the way the public found out. She read about it. Years later, she described the moment to Parade magazine. According to Kristen, she was speechless. Nobody really knew why. Guy Williams found out in an even worse way. He was at a Beverly Hills photo session when a reporter asked him when filming would begin on the next season. Williams was about to answer when the CBS publicist standing next to him cut in and said the renewal was not certain yet. That is how the lead of the show learned that his show was probably over, in the middle of a sentence to a journalist. Irwin Allen, when the news reached him, reportedly screamed at his longtime assistant Paul Zastutnevich, "This show can't be canceled. It still has another 10 years left in it." What CBS never said publicly, but what the production records make clear, is that the cancellation was not a creative decision. It was a math problem. The per-episode cost had ballooned from $130,000 in Season 1 to $165,000 by Season 3. The Jupiter 2 interior set had cost $350,000 to build. That made it the most expensive standing set on television at the time. CBS had also taken massive losses on Cleopatra at the parent company, and by some accounts, CBS chairman William Page Haley had personally disliked the show for years and used the budget fight as cover to kill it. The numbers stopped working. The political will to fight for the show was gone. There was no series finale. The Robinsons are still out there, somewhere in the third season finale, frozen mid-adventure. They never got home. A show that ran for 3 years, beat Star Trek in the ratings every season they aired against each other, and built one of the most expensive standing sets in television history. CBS canceled it by not putting it in a programming announcement. The show ended quietly. 3 years on the air, 83 episodes. The most expensive pilot ever made at that point, paid for partly by a comedian named Red Skelton, screened to a CBS audience who started laughing. A grown man jumping out of his seat to stop the projector. A villain who was supposed to die in season 1 and ended up running the show. A robot designed in a hurry by a man who had already designed the most famous robot in cinema. A family stranded in space who were not allowed to kiss on television. A composer working under a stage name who would later score Star Wars. The Lost in Space that people grew up with was not the show CBS ordered. It was the show that survived being assembled from spare parts after the original version got laughed at in a screening room. Irwin Allen lived another 23 years after the cancellation. He made several more shows. None of them ever caught fire the way Lost in Space did. He never figured out which part of the show was the magic. The truth is, nobody did. 2 characters that nobody had planned for, added at the last second by a nervous story editor, accidentally became one of the most beloved television series of their decade. The show survived its own making. The version we have is the one that should never have existed. If you like the kind of television history that almost never happened, subscribe and hype this video so more retro fans can find it. I'm Bast with Just Iconic Rewinds. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.